Welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. I am excited to be here today with Steve Montague. Steve is the CEO of Midrex, and we'll talk a little bit about who Midrex is and who Steve is. But Steve, welcome to Winning Through Culture.
Thank you, Tim.
It's great to have you with us. So before we launch into this topic about mentorship and mentoring and being a mentor, love to have you just share. You and I know each other through our shared relationship at C12. We've had a few people on, including Buck Jacobs from C12 before. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Steve and Midrex?
Maybe I'll start with Midrex.
There you go.
Midrex has been in Charlotte actually since the early 70s.
Okay.
Been around a long time. We're a technology company, but not in the sense of an IT company. We have technologies that make iron. So we really take rust and we make iron. That's a gross oversimplification of what we do, but we built plants in 21 different countries. Most of the work we do is international. And I grew up in Charlotte, born here, and blessed to live and work in my hometown.
Not a lot of people that can say that.
Yeah, and I've spent a whole career at Midrex. Wonderful company. Our purpose is to love and serve others.
I love the purpose of a company that's as big and international as you are. And is it fair to say that you guys do what you do also in a very environmentally friendly way?
We do. In our industry, we have the lowest CO2 emissions of any way that iron can be made today. So it's a thriving market.
Yeah, I figured as much in a very green-oriented environment. And given that it's early November and it was 75 yesterday, we could probably stand to have that. So topic is mentorship, and I'd love to just start out, Steve, with how has mentorship manifested in your life?
Wow. I don't think I have any one mentor who is head and shoulders among others. I suppose my mentors are more like a collage, so to speak. And I've really had the privilege of doing so many different roles at Midrex. I've spent my whole career there.
Yeah, which is pretty stellar.
And been around some fantastic technical minds and leaders. And I suppose, Tim, selfishly, I've taken the best from those that I've been around. And now when I think about that, I really want to take what I have and use it to help others along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing you hit on, Steve, that is, I think, relevant is the reality that having mentors is plural. There's an S on it. And it's, to your point, it's learning from a variety of different people that can teach you different things because of their own unique gifts and or experiences. So I think that's an important point. This isn't about finding that one person, Obi-Wan Kenobi that leads you through your life as a mentor. I mean, you've been a mentor, you've been a mentee, and today I'd like to focus on your role as a mentor, as a business leader. What are the qualities as a mentor you do look for in someone that you might be mentoring?
Really, three things. I think trust is foundational. I don't think that we go very far in a mentor-mentee type relationship, or for that matter, in any relationship without a deep trust. So trust is there. Openness is another quality that I hold in high regard. I learned, I believe, a long time ago, despite what I had been taught, that when I grew up, people wanted to say that you separate what happens in your personal life with business. And I always struggle with that. I mean, I have one mind and one life, and I don't know how to segregate those two. And so I think having an openness, not just to talk about business, but also a relationship that can deal with people on a personal level is really important. And I think the last quality that I really look for is potential. Potential is interesting. I think that perhaps the best metric I've found in assessing potential is really looking at speed of learning, how quickly someone learns. I mean, it hits us all, right? We all get to a place in a particular role where maybe we don't learn as quickly as we did, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means we might be ready for the next role, or could be that we've reached our potential and we're outside of what we need to be doing.
It's an interesting perspective. The word potential comes up a lot, it's used a lot, but to measure it from the speed of learning, I could see that. So trust, openness, and potential. And those are the things that you look for. when you, and I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit on this topic, but when you look for a mentor for yourself, what are some of the things you're looking for and how have you sought those people out?
Well, for sure, I want to look for someone who I trust and who I have a respect for in the field that I'm trying to learn more about. But I really ask myself the question, do they care about me? Is this someone who's really just interested in what they can get out of me for the business side, or somebody who really cares not only about the business, but about me personally?
Yeah, and again, this being a part of a series, we've had some discussion around the non-transactional nature of mentor-mentee and how there does have to be a desire by the mentor to pass something on, and by the mentee, a respect that the person that they're being mentored by has something of value to pass on to them, and that there's a mutual care and respect in the relationship. When you think about this topic in business and leadership, why do you think a leader should consider being a mentor?
Well, a career goes by fast. I'm 30-something years into my career now, and I don't think we ever stop learning. And we really want to work to be better all the time. When I think about why, with that perspective, that we should consider working with a mentor, for me, it just comes down to the fact that it's painful and it's lonely to try to learn everything on your own. That's a choice. You can try to do that, but I think we're better teammates. We're better, in my case, husbands or fathers, by trying to benefit from what we can learn from others and jump up on the learning curve. And what's the saying? It goes something like, a wise man learns from his mistakes, but the even wiser man learns from the mistakes of his neighbor.
Yeah. Well, that's a theme that comes up a lot in this podcast. Failure is a much greater teacher than success. So,
right.
And I do think, to your point, I know from my own vantage point, in the opportunities I've had to be a mentor, people have shared with me that some of the greatest things they've learned were my willingness to share some of the mistakes I made or some of the failures I had. I remember giving a talk to a group of new leaders that had been newly installed to run different business units. This goes back a long time, and I was asked to speak to the group, and I said, I'll speak to them on the one condition that I will share with them the top 10 mistakes I've made professionally. And the person that asked me to speak said, well, that's not really, we want to hear about your successes. And I said, honestly, then I'm not your person, but I'll be happy to come in and share the mistakes I made. So I did. They said, all right, fine, come in. And to this day, and this was probably 17 years ago, I know a couple of those people that were in there. And one of them, every time I see them, reminds me that you got me thinking in a way differently because you were willing to be vulnerable that day and share what didn't work or how you made mistakes.
That's awesome. And I love that you introduced the word vulnerability, because I think we so often know how to lead out of a strength or get what we want by being in the right position over someone else. But really, the kind of relationships that can be formed when we introduce vulnerability are absolutely special. And I can reflect similarly to the failure side of things. I think back to a time when, frankly, I was more interested in being right than trying to find truth sometimes. And I had someone ask me, they called me out, and it's kind of tough love, but they asked me, was I more concerned about finding the truth or about being right? And when we can admit we're wrong and we have mistakes, I think it's pretty liberating for the people that are around us.
Yeah, I have a mentor who shared with me years ago, a great saying is you can write to your, being correct yourself right out of a relationship, meaning literally just write yourself out by trying to be right all the time. Yeah. And I was like, that's painful. And the truth is a little bit more, sometimes painful, but more impactful. When you think about being a mentor, what do you think is kind of the most important aspects? I mean, obviously we've talked about trust and openness and a person's potential, but what do you think from a mentor perspective is probably the most important aspect of mentoring?
I think most people would really dwell on things like job knowledge, but I'm really not going to go down that route. I think there are a lot of people who are quite special in the knowledge they have for a job. I think it's truly about the most special quality is finding someone who will truly care about the mentee, both professionally and personally. And, it can't be superficial.
Mm-hmm.
People feel that, they know that. It's got to be genuine. And I think what it leads to is that if it is genuine, it comes with an acknowledgement that you have to invest yourself. I have to walk into it knowing that I have to invest in myself and in the lives of others.
Yeah, that investment in others, I think, is, again, thematically something I've heard in a lot of my conversations that comes up is relational and all in, so to speak. When you think about a mentor-mentee relationship, are there specific things that you believe, Steve, either party can do to add value to the relationship?
One of the simple things I believe, work-wise, it kind of just flows. We know what each other do, and we spend, a lot of time generally if it's around work. But I think, again, invest in the time to get to know someone's family, to get to know their story, where they come from, what drives them, how they're made up. I think that adds a lot of value. And I think another thing that can really add huge value is, depending on this mentor-mentee relationship, if you're in a position where you can create opportunity, I think there's a certain learning that takes place. And part of the journey of doing that is really, and actually one of the best parts of being a mentor, frankly, is being in a position sometimes where you can create an opportunity and give someone that chance to go, show us what you can do. And perhaps it's a little like pushing them out of the nest in some respects, but I find that's when people really take off.
Well, and I'm sure you can think of, as I can think of, people in my life that filled that role. And it's a little bit like being thrown in the deep end of the pool, but they're still lifeguarding. They haven't left you to drown. They're there with you, but they know that I'll give you an opportunity, but it's going to put you in a spot that's uncomfortable and force you to grow, but I'll still be here to be with you through that part of the journey.
Absolutely. The trust is there, knowing that if the times get hard and I don't know how to sort it out, they're going to be there for me.
Yep. But they're going to bring you to it. I know from our conversations outside this podcast, we both can point to many mentors in our lives. When you think about some of your mentor relationships, is there anything either story-wise or otherwise that you'd want to share about a particular relationship or relationships thematically?
Yeah, there's a really special mentor-mentee relationship that I've experienced at Midrex. I would say I was the mentor.
Who can sometimes learn more than the mentee.
And that's really the case. It feels kind of strange saying it, but I've learned as much on the journey, I'm sure, as they have. But we had a special need. We were looking to fill some big shoes eventually, and really went to the market and found a big ball of potential, someone who really knew leadership and knew about hard work. And they didn't know Midrex, knew life, and started on a journey really to teach about Midrex, and got really involved personally with them. In this case, this guy, I think of him like a brother, really. And one of the most satisfying things in my life, really, to see how they've blossomed and grown, and what they can do, and how they treat others, and how they also mentor other people, and have just taken things far beyond what I thought I could have ever done to another level. And I think, in so many words, Tim, I think we all stand on the shoulders of others, and hopefully I've done my part to build that next level.
Yeah, I do think that's one of the byproducts of mentorship for the mentor is the ability, and I love that. I've been using that statement for years. My grandfather actually taught me that. We all stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us. But it's, as you shared your story, I think about one of my relationships where, again, I would say I was the mentor, but certainly learned a lot from the individual, and the great professional and personal satisfaction of seeing that person become the person that you saw the potential of, at some point in the past. And again, the mentee in this case did the work, but to be a part of the journey is pretty impactful.
That's a special part of the job, maybe the most rewarding.
Yeah. One thing also, as we're having this discussion specific to that, when you think about, I'll say, formality, informality of mentor-mentee relationship, what are your thoughts on the formality, if you will, because I think we've both seen, in a corporate sense at least, hey, we have a formal mentorship program, which I remember being put in one. I didn't pick the person. I was put with them all the way to the organic, which happened because the trust was established and the working relationship was there. But do you have any feelings one way or another on that, what's worked better? And maybe it's not better, it might be just different.
I do think a formal program would be best.
Mm-hmm.
I will be candid and say that I've not been part of a formal program.
Okay.
I think in the cases that we've utilized it, it's been a little more informal. You get the right people together and they make their way as they move. I do believe that there's learning that takes place that can be captured and formalized to make it even better. And so I would encourage everyone to do that, although I admit that that's not something that I've been able to so far do myself.
Yeah, as I asked the question, I think back, and I've been fortunate myself, like you, to have a lot of really good mentors. And clearly they were, in most instances, I would say professional work-related relationships, but always organic, not structured. And the one structured relationship I do remember having was in a corporate setting. Again, I didn't pick my mentor. I don't know how that ultimately happened, whether they picked me or were assigned to me. And I did learn a lot. There's no question about it. But it was definitely a different dynamic. So I just think it's an interesting, in the moment thought relative to this topic of formal or informal mentoring. So as you think about leadership and your point, you've been doing what you've been doing, we'll just say 30 plus years we both have. What role do you see mentorship potentially playing in the future for you?
As I get older, I frankly look more and more to do those things that give me energy, those things that I enjoy the most.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, one of the things that really gives me the most joy is just that, is helping other people, investing in them. I don't think that I've been given all the opportunities that I have over a career and all the experiences I have just to take them and go home and sit on them somehow. I think
put your light under a bushel.
Yeah, I really want to unleash the kind of things that I've been blessed to learn to try to help other people. So I can't imagine the future without thinking about working with people and helping people as a mentor and even as a mentee. Yeah. I don't want to stop learning. There are other things in life that I don't know enough about, and I want to rely on people like yourself. We have our chats from time to time and try to sharpen one another.
Yeah, you hit something there that I do think is powerful in the sense that for someone like yourself, myself, that espouses to this idea of mentorship, because I think you're putting ego aside and saying, I can learn something from this person if I'm the mentee. I find it interesting personally that I can point to a lot of fantastic mentors. And I also have had the opportunity to be a mentor to others. And it's this almost continuum of, there's always someone further along the journey than you or I that has a little bit more wisdom that I can learn from. And then I can pass that on to, in essence, the next generation. Usually it's generational, not always, but sometimes it's generational. So I think that continuum of if you're a mentor, you're likely to be a mentee at the same time on a different topic is an important one to note.
Absolutely. What an honor. Imagine the people who might look at you as a mentor, who might even take the time to stop and come and say, hey, you made a big difference for me, and you're part of who I am now. Maybe we should even ask the question, Tim, have we taken the time to go to the folks who've invested in us, in our lives, and make sure they understand the role they played as mentors for us?
Well, I know I am actually doing that as we speak, in the sense that as we were putting this whole series together, I actually started making a list of all the impactful mentors in my life. You're actually on the list.
Wow.
So thank you for that. And it's been fascinating to be able to go and have those conversations. Haven't had them all, but I've just started. And it's funny because one of the people I had a conversation with said, no, you're mentoring me. So I'm, in this case, they were looking at me as their mentor. And I was thanking them for being my mentor. They're like, no, you have this backward.
Yeah, but how cool is that, right?
And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, you've been mentoring me. I said, no, I consider you a mentor. And want to say thank you. And he says, no, you have no idea. And we're roughly the same age, but not that that matters, because I do sometimes think of my mentors as wiser, older people. This person's very wise for their age, but it's an interesting cycle. And I guess the reason that Amanda and I wanted to do this series was really, it's a topic that, as in the broader context of building a winning culture in an organization, whether it's formal or informal, I do believe that this idea of mentorship is put into practice and is a part of the DNA, the fabric of that organization, which enriches the culture and, lifts people up. So any final thoughts as we wrap up this topic today, Steve, on mentorship for the leaders, entrepreneurs listening to us today?
No, I'd just like to thank you. Again, I feel like you've been a mentor to me, maybe that same kind of, we can arm wrestle over who's the mentor.
Oh, you'll win that arm wrestle
one day. But I really appreciate you doing this and being invited to share a few thoughts about it. And I think this whole notion of taking the time out to talk to those that have impacted us, that's really uplifting. And if anything, it just encourages more of the same. It builds everyone up to continue doing this. The world needs that.
The world needs that right now, Steve. There's no doubt, and that is why it's this particular topic in a society that's unfortunately become a little divisive. Lifting each other up is an important goal. So, well, thank you very much for being with us today. As always, enjoy our time together. Appreciate all our listeners being with us today on Winning Through Culture. I trust that you will take away some ideas and encourage you to reflect on perhaps who has been a mentor to you and express your gratitude to them, whether it's in writing or verbally. And conversely, who have you had the opportunity to be a mentor to, and how can you kind of pay it forward, making yourself available to those around you that might have something to learn from you. And I think, to your point, we'll not only build a better world by all participating in that, but certainly build stronger and healthy cultures in the companies that we are stewarded to lead. So thanks for being with us on this episode of Winning Through Culture. Until we are together next time, be well.